think it was just saying that, like, what do I have control over? Honestly, what can I control? And the answer is me. There is no other answer. I cannot control anything else, nobody else, the world, what happens, the fears that I have. None of it can I control. I can control only me.
Welcome to Great Conversations with Nicola O'Donoghue, the podcast where everyday individuals share their extraordinary stories of struggle, success, and the wisdom they found along the way. The wisdom of the day: you've got control over 3 things in your life: your thoughts, your feelings, and how you act. This profound insight comes from this week's guest, Leeanne Heald. But here's the kicker. She didn't just figure this out recently. She had this epiphany at the age of 16. Imagine realizing at such a young age that you have a choice about how your life can play out. Leeanne realized that she could either go through life in pain or live her life with a sense of purpose. And guess what? She chose purpose. Leanne's story reminds us that personal responsibility isn't some heavy anchor to drag around. It's probably more like a jetpack for empowerment. It's definitely the key to gracefully facing life's challenges. And what's more, it's the secret to experiencing more joy and authenticity in your relationships and greater success in your career. For me, the biggest message from Leanne's story is own your own shit, embrace who you are, and watch how it transforms not just your life, but the lives of those around you. Leeanne Heald, welcome to Great Conversations. How are you today?
Hello, Nicola. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I am very honoured to be interviewing you today. I'm excited to get into your story. As you know, we have a starting tradition on this podcast. The previous guest has left you a question. Now, your question's actually in 2 parts. So I'll read the first one and then maybe we can do the second part once you've answered the first one. There it is, your first question. When you look into the future, what do you wish for your children and who they become?
How did the last person know I was going to have kids? When I look into the future for my children, I mean, I think the general thing that comes up is obviously around, like, actually just looking after our planet and making sure that they have one to live on that's able to sustain them and their lives going forward. But I think more importantly is that I do everything I can to ensure that my children are first and foremost able to look after themselves in the world. I think that teaching them a sense of responsibility early on is critical for their development of their own independence. I think that becomes important for me because of my story, and it's really important. I have a daughter who's 9. I think that we do our girls a disservice if we don't give them all of the tools that they need to grow up and be independent women in this world, and to be able to operate from a place of being able to make choices, whatever they are, that they're fully equipped to make whatever choices they want, whatever that means for her in the future. And then for my son, who's only 4, the same thing, that he can go into the world operating from a place of kindness and responsibility, and that they're good people, that actually contribute in some way to this place. And I think if I manage that, then I'll be a happy mom.
No, that is so beautiful, Lee. And I'm curious if that links onto the second part of the question, which is, what legacy do you wish to create and leave?
Yeah, so I suppose being a good mom is part of that. What legacy? I want to do something good I think it's important to me. My purpose is around beauty and bringing beauty into the world, and that's just not pretty things. That's about actually getting to the nitty-gritty of what needs to happen in this world, and each of us can contribute in some way. And I do believe that each person has the opportunity to leave some small mark on this world. And so I suppose it's that, is that if I can in any way help or assist somebody else in their path, then that's something that I want to do. I think that my path has been about development and growth, and about developing others and organizations, and I suppose for me that's how we get it done. And so I suppose I don't need to have a grand legacy, just that if I've managed to assist somebody else on their path, then I've done enough.
Oh, I love that. You know, when you were talking, you said two words that really jumped out to me. The first was responsibility. You used it a couple of times when you were speaking about your children. And then the second was beauty. And I would love for you to go into and explain, how did responsibility and beauty, how have they shown up in your life?
Over and over again, as a continued theme throughout my life. When I was, I have a long memory of my life, from a very young age. I was an only child, and my parents divorced when I was 2. And something around those circumstances certainly contribute to your sense of responsibility, or misplaced responsibility, possibly. But I've always felt very strongly that one makes their own destiny, and one forges their own path. But also through my experiences and my journey, is that by taking responsibility for my own actions, I feel empowered to do what it is that I want to do. I through that, I'm able to motivate myself to get things done. I'm able to ensure that I'm at peace with how I show up in the world. I think that taking responsibility for my thoughts and my actions makes me more resilient. And I think it just helps in relationships as well. I recall when I was going into varsity, and I'd had a particular relationship that was really challenging for me, and had been for a couple of years. And I remember really clearly having this sort of epiphany, standing in a parking lot with, no doubt, with a glass of wine in my hand, but this epiphany that I kept on trying to figure out how this relationship could change, and how, what things needed to change in order for this relationship to be better. And really it dawned on me that the only thing that could change, and I know it sounds like, probably a Hallmark card, but all that could change was me and how I showed up in that relationship. And suddenly that sort of, again, that sense of responsibility showed up in my life. And I was like, well, it's me. I have to show up differently. I have to have courageous conversations with this person. I have to bring empathy and understanding. And within one additional meeting after that moment, our entire relationship has changed. And to this day, it's one of the relationships I treasure most. Wow. And that moment has just never left me, because it really highlighted in a very real way just how what we do and what we choose and what we decide and how that informs the way we behave and show up. It's just really the only thing that we can control, and really the only thing that matters at the end of the day, because you determine it for yourself.
Absolutely.
So responsibility is essential for me.
Yeah, it sounds that way. And my God, to be able to have that level of wisdom at such a young age still, like what, 19, 20, he's still a baby. It's unbelievable. But it sounds as if that journey to that wisdom started when your parents divorced, because I'm assuming that it takes time to cultivate that level of insight and connection to what the word responsibility looks like for you in order to then be able to shape your life. So talk to me about before you got to that point, like what was your life like? Where did you grow up? Talk to me about Leeanne before you arrived at the parking lot with a glass of wine in your hands and had this amazing revelation.
So let me think. So from about the age of 2, like I said, my parents divorced, and my mom has often laughed at me because she said I was born a little bit differently. She also always has some real moments of awe when I speak about my memory of these times. And funnily enough, I'm listening to Brandy Carlisle's new book, audiobook, and I just so connected with her first chapter, because she talks about this kind of almost photographic memory that happens a lot of the time because of the different. She moved around so a lot, and the different backgrounds sort of made it easier to remember these things, is what she puts it down to. But as parents do when they divorce, they sent me to a counselor, and we will giggle about it because I told the counselor, listen, I need to look after these two because they have no idea what's going on, and they're definitely not going to be able to figure this out for themselves.
You did, as a 2-year-old child, you're telling this counselor. I mean, the fact that you even have the vocabulary to articulate that, it is such a special gift, because, I mean, I barely remember anything about my childhood. So it is really unique gift.
That particular thing I don't remember saying to the counselor, but this information came back to us via the counselor and via my mom at a later stage.
Wow. But that's a lot though, to feel it too. Like that sense of having to, like, for all that we giggle, the sense that you have to parent, the sense of feeling that you have the responsibility to parent your parents at such a young age. Like, how did that impact the choices you made and your childhood, what you experienced?
I think I had incredibly loving parents, and I think that's the first place to start, is that for all the ups and downs that we went through, they remained, and do to this day, central pillars of strength and love in my life, and they always were, and they always will be. And I think maybe it was just me and something about my need to control as well, because that's definitely another part of who I am. And so there were many up and down times where things were tough, and as it is for children with separated children, you're pulled from one direction to the other, and that's nobody's fault. It's just a consequence of the circumstances. And so we went back and forth, but really, growing up in South Africa, I had a wonderful childhood. I had my cousins, and we would, play. I grew up on a small holding, and off we'd go in our, with our backpack with nothing in it, and probably barefoot, and go find scorpions and spiders and things that we shouldn't have. When I look at it now, I think, like, my God, would I let my children do that? No, what were they thinking?
I think that as well. It's a time, isn't it? Like, I think we'd go out for the whole day, like days on
Yeah.
end, and our parents wouldn't see us. And I just think, oh my God, there's like no way that they would ever do that. Like now,
This
but
is
back then it was
before cell
just,
phones. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, now we won't
yeah,
even let our kids go to school without cell phones. And back
exactly.
then, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
Yeah.
we'd,
But what you're speaking to though is like actually, I can see why it likely it reinforced this sense of responsibility and taking responsibility for your actions. Because I do feel that if you have a childhood that like you and I did, I mean, I wasn't hunting for scorpions barefoot, but when you are out in the world, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about relationships. You have to problem solve and get yourself out of sticky situations, and communication with other people, and you have to just learn how to defend and stick up for yourself, don't you? Because there's no one around. Like
absolutely,
that's just what it was.
absolutely. I think the flip side of that coin was always that, yeah, you learn to problem solve, you learn to be independent. And I think my struggle for a long time was the flip side, which was a sense of being alone in the world. It wasn't a real fear. Well, I mean, it's an existential truth, but but I think I sort of had to. That became very real for me, and that's where I had to replace that kind of. It was defined for me as a fundamental life operating principle, where I was operating from a place of just that I had to rely on myself no matter what, and that was replaced really with about actually coming into the world and bringing beauty into the world, and that's where that sense of purpose comes from. But it it's just so interesting how we I think for our perceptions drive the beliefs that we have about what happens in the world, but also about ourselves. And so I went through this course when I was about 16, and that's where I really realized um, how I had been operating in the world, and it both strengthened me and stayed with me, and that is who I am. But um, it turned on its head the that I was operating from a sense of pain, I think, rather than from a sense of purpose, and
Mm.
that was really like an awakening, and and again, sort of that I think, like you said earlier, um, how did I actually define this as a sense of responsibility? How did I make the word make sense? And that's when that happened for me, is that I am responsible. I'm not alone, but I am responsible for what happens.
Mm.
And that's empowering. It's not overwhelming. It's absolutely empowering.
Mm.
I can do anything I want to do because I am able, and if I decide and I choose, then it shall be. And I've lived in that vein my entire life, and it's one of
Jeez.
the things I'm very proud of.
I
Um,
really want to go into that. I really want to go into that. That is fun. That is so powerful that from the age of 16, your life shifted from being driven by pain to being driven by a purpose. You might not have known it then, but that was like, uh, that is just so powerful. And I think what you're speaking to here is one of the fundamental issues that we have in society at the moment, is that most people operate from a sense of pain unconsciously.
mm,
That is what's driving them rather than a sense of purpose. And I would love for you to explain what that looks like and what that means. So, what does somebody look like? How do they operate? What are the consequences? Maybe drawing on personal examples of like how
mm.
you were living when you were living driven by pain versus the difference when you start to explore and step more into living a life driven by purpose.
For me, what immediately comes up is definitely the sense of living in effect of my external environment before that point, where I suppose to some degree, using the word victim is too strong, but definitely in effect of circumstance where I was, what my circumstances were.
So by that, do you mean letting them define you? So letting your circumstances, people define you as such, and then carrying their definitions and identity of you. And so not feeling a sense of control over your identity and who you are.
Yeah, that and just sort of going through the motions, I suppose, is not even so much as like feeling a sense of identity, but not really having any identity at all. Is that these things are defined, they're laid out, that's how it is. These are the circumstances that you're in, and get on with it. I didn't show up as my authentic self. I lived in fear of rejection by others. And just fear of losing other people, and that impacted my ability to show up authentically. So that fear started to manifest into allowing people to take advantage of me, allowing people to bully maybe in certain circumstances, or to push their agenda. I wouldn't sort of stand up for myself or say what I wanted or share how I felt. And I think that, again, like spoke to this like sense of being alone, was that rather just, just be quiet, just don't say anything, because it's not important how I feel. It's rather just let everybody else be happy, just keep the peace.
Yeah.
And that definitely was a theme through my childhood and adolescence. And I, funnily enough, I met my husband, who you know very well, when I was 17 years old, and it's really interesting because it was around this exact time that I was starting to define this sense of responsibility, the sense of who I was, and really that's been the relationship that in many ways it's been the relationship that has defined how I believe relationships should be. A relationship where I've always been able to show up authentically, and where that's been celebrated, which I suppose some people externally might say, "Oh, gee, you're really lucky. That's incredible that you managed to find that person." But I would challenge that and say that that's not the case all the time. Yes, I am lucky, and I do adore him and love him, and he's wonderful and very special. But really, we have moved together in this life by living our true selves, and by saying, like, this is what's important for both of us. We're both equally able to say that, and it's in a place of respect and love, where you say, okay, well, how do we navigate that? Like when those things are not in agreement, how do we figure it out? And because respect is paramount, because it's about authenticity and not about being right. It just happens so easily from that space of love, respect, and authenticity. Really, there are very few times when it hasn't been easy to resolve something.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think again, it's about being responsible. It comes back to that. Is that how do you show up? How do you be the person that makes the life that you want? And since that time, my husband Lawrence is a big example. But even in the relationships that I had before that, these relationships were redefined, where I was able to say, like, this is who I am, and you have to overcome the fear. the fear, we all feel that fear. The fear doesn't go away. What happens is that you grow the courage to overcome it, and to say that what's more important? Is it important that I have this relationship, or is it important that we are together in this relationship as partners? And I'm talking about all relationships. Is that both of us get to show up and to feel that we're seen? And why have the relationship if that's not the case?
It sounds like what you're talking to, and it's, I mean, don't you just love the universe? Because I was listening to something recently about relationships, specifically in regards to romantic relationships, and how most people build relationships from a sense of around passion, but actually the relationships that are, fulfilling, that withstand the test of time, are the ones that are built around a sense of shared purpose. So the fact that you have just articulated that so beautifully as well is is really timely. And like, there's so much sort of coming up for me as well, because I guess it's like, what I'm hearing is, when you even, irrespective of Lawrence, and it is phenomenal how you both have navigated your relationship and grown together. And it feels like when you met, as you said, you were at a point already when you were building your own life around a sense of purpose and what that looked like for you. And this is the power of relationships and what we attract and energy, isn't it? Because when you're standing in that space of wanting to honor and own your own authenticity and purpose and make change in your life, the people that align with that vibration will be the ones that will stand the test of time. The ones that are driven by fear, pain, those relationships 9 times out of 10 won't. And that's the power of what you're talking about as well, isn't it? Is, it's a generative feeling and process when you start to live your life from this sense of authenticity, on purpose, taking responsibility for yourself, how you show up, the relationships, your behavior, the impact that you have in the world. It's a hugely empowering position to be in. Practically, what did you do to help you define that sense of purpose, to help you build those relationships, of which, your marriage to Laurie is one? How did you use that to determine the choices you made about your career? And like, I just would love to know more about that, of when you made that decision, what was the impact and what trajectory did that take your life on?
I think the truth of it is that it's not one moment. It's a series of decisions and steps towards honoring who I am, what I think is important, and what I want to do in this world.
How do you uncover that? What did you do to figure that out?
I think it was just saying that, like, what do I have control over? Honestly, what can I control? And the answer is me. There is no other answer. I cannot control anything else, nobody else, the world, what happens, the fears that I have. None of it can I control. I can control only me. And I suppose that starts to, I extrapolate into what part of me, what part of me can I control? I can control my mind. I can control my emotions. I can control the actions that I take. And it just keeps coming back to this, like, who am I, and why do I want to do that, and who do I want to be? And so act accordingly, think accordingly, feel accordingly. I've often just in life, one of the things that I so regularly see is people worrying about money, worrying about the future, worrying about the past, worrying about today, worrying about the number of things they have to do today. And I have reflected so much on this emotion and how useless it is to us as human beings to worry. It is a manifestation of exactly the opposite of how I'm trying to show up in the world, which is that you cannot control these things. Worrying is using up so much of your energy. Just do it. Just get on with it. Just do what needs to be done, and the rest falls into place. And what will be, and you can only do what you can do. So there is nothing to worry about. Yes, be concerned, have a vision, understand what it is that you want and work towards it. But worrying is a waste of energy in every sense of the word.
It's bringing up the is it Stephen Covey, the circles of influence and control. So it's one of the models, as you say. It's actually really useful in anxiety as well. But you draw two circles, and the circle in the middle is what you can control, and then the outer circle is your circle of influence. And very much the idea is what you're saying, all you can do is focus on what is within your control. And so just focus on the inner circle, and what happens in the outer circle in many ways has nothing to, you have to surrender that. There's no point worrying or getting anxious about that. You may be able to exert some form of influence, but actually focusing on what you can control is where you should spend your time and energy. And it's a way of helping move through what you're saying, anxiety, worry, stress. The only thing that actually we can ever control in life is ourselves. And as you say, our mind, our emotions, and then consequently our behavior. Sure. That's it. That there is leadership. Honestly, for me, that's like, imagine if we lived in a world where everybody went into it with this sense of self-control. I don't know if self-control is right. Leadership, like accountability.
It is. And that's what it comes down to, is that if the only thing that I can control is myself, then I'm going to do a damn good job of it, because I can hope that the behaviors that I bring will impact the external in the way that I'm hoping that it will. But it's inconsequential, because I have to take that behavior based on what I think is right or important, or because I value it. So the consequence of that behavior, the responsibility is always mine, but it's for the world to show me, not for me to show the world. Yeah.
I mean, there's this concept of living from the inside out, isn't it? And it's very interesting, because we're not, maybe more so now, I think there's a movement, particularly the self-care development movement. Although I am very cynical about that. I think a lot of it is navel gazing and not really deep, deep introspection that we need. But a lot of us are not encouraged to take that time, because to exhibit that sense of leadership, to exhibit that sense of control, you have to stop and really connect with yourself. And I do believe that so many of us live life hugely disconnected from who we are. I mean, I spent many years living in my head. We're not taught the skills. We're not necessarily given permission or space to really do that level of self exploration, to understand, oh, okay, well, what is my mind telling me? Oh, how am I feeling in this situation? Like we're very much in this state of just do, check the box off, keep moving forward, productivity. I know that you, like from a career, and I'm sure we'll go into this, but you've worked in huge organizations, you're now an entrepreneur. So in some ways that's a catalyst in an environment of productivity and doing and getting stuff done. Doing is getting stuff done. So how did you create that space and that bubble and that opportunity for you to operate from the inside out, for you to actually sort of be in control when the external world around you maybe was not giving you permission to do that, or at odds with what you were doing?
I think that sometimes we tell ourselves that the fear is coming from the outside. The fear is because of, as you put it, the world not giving us permission. But I think that the truth is that the fear comes from within us. And again, living from the inside outwards, is that I can't control what people will think about me or how they will respond to me. And so that fear comes from that. It's the fear of, what if I'm rejected? What if people don't like this? But what does that mean? It means that I have fear. So I need to conquer that fear, and I need to go out into the world and see what happens. And honestly, there have only ever been people on my path that have really supported that. And yes, there have been people who haven't, or who didn't get that. And I think it's really important at this stage to say, this choice is not about pushing your agenda onto the world either. It's about allowing other people to react to that in their own natural way too. So just because I've made a decision that's important for me and who I am and how I want to show up in this world, I shouldn't be steamrolling over everybody else or what they want. So it's not about that. It's about just showing up honest and aligned and on a path to what it is that I've always wanted. And so people come, and if they are aligned, they go along in the journey. And if they're not, we very peacefully sort of don't have any more to do with each other. And it's interesting how that happens. Maybe it's, if you relinquish that control, is that you no longer need or yearn for that recognition from outside. Is that it just is. And the few people who do get it, or who do want to be a part of it, or who do want to come along for the ride, it's enough. And it's enough, because just knowing that you're behaving in alignment with yourself and your truth and your purpose, it's enough.
That's one of the things that I've been really inspired by, and what I've tried to, like, how you role model this in your life is what I'm trying to bring into my life. Because what I really love and respect about, and it's not just showing up as a CEO and a business leader, it's also how you parent, how I see you as a wife and as a daughter. Like, it shows up in all of that. And it's this beautiful grounding, like you said, of, you know who you are, you know what your values are, and then you honor them in your life. So often when people say, oh, I don't care what other people think, there's a harshness to that. And what I see in you is that, to one level, you don't care, because when you go into the world honoring your values and who you are, that's what you care about. But that doesn't mean that you don't feel. So you give people the space to react. That doesn't make you immune from not feeling whatever emotions then come up. So you can be grounded in a sense of, I've shown up in this situation exactly as I wanted to, aligned with my authentic self. You give space for the other person to react. It doesn't mean that then the barriers come down and you don't emotionally respond to that. But there's a way that I've seen you process and move through emotions from that space of, you feel whatever it might be, hurt, disappointment, whatever, maybe a response. But because you're so grounded in a sense of self and who you are, and having done the right thing that's aligned to your authenticity, it gives you that strength and ability to move through, I think, emotions and what comes up, and make peace a lot quicker with the outcome.
I was saying that I think there's two parts to that, which is that the first is that showing up authentically aligned with your values, is that those values for me are around kindness and love and compassion and responsibility. And then when showing up from that place is really that the expectation is the same of the other, but also there's enough respect that I expect that person to show up authentically as well from a place of their values. And so when we hold others accountable in that way, in the same way that we hold ourselves accountable, suddenly you're not taking that on anymore, because it's not for me, it's for you. And the thing is that I care deeply about other people. My whole life has been dedicated, really, in some way or the other, to other people. But it's around development, and this is not about being a steamroller and saying you must be accountable, you must take responsibility, this is how you do it, but rather showing people a path and taking people on a journey that they define for themselves, in which they can start to connect with their authentic selves and go out into the world empowered.
You've spoken about that a few times, this and I wonder if this is where beauty shows up in the world for you. So right at the beginning, I said, how does responsibility and beauty play out in your life? And I wonder if this is the beauty part for you, of that people get to define their journey and what that looks like for themselves. And so that's as well as taking accountability and responsibility for their own actions, they also have the autonomy to bring their own beauty and gifts into the world in a way that's really resonant and aligned with their authentic self. So talk to me about how you've brought your beauty into the world.
Well, I mean, obviously my painting that I do once a year, that's really important. Yeah. And cake decoration. But other than that, my life has really been defined about, and I suppose it was at the point where I decided that I'd be studying psychology and philosophy and anthropology.
That doesn't surprise me at all, Leanne.
Well,
thought you were going to say accounting.
I did a bit of that too. But it's always been for me about people. It's always been on some level about understanding people, but also about understanding people's journeys and people's identities and how it is that we define that for ourselves, and how we define ourselves in the world and how we go into the world in a very specific way based on the way that we think or where it is that we've come from. And so it was only natural for me to fall into the social science, so I suppose. Yeah. And from there, I really just stepped into that as the universe presented it to me, I suppose, at each opportunity where I could see that I could become more of what it was I wanted to be. I took it, and that went from being a psychometrist to then organizational development and people development and leadership development. And then family development. So at that point, it was a case of how much more am I going to develop other people? Or I also want to have a family of my own. And so I left corporate and ventured into the world of entrepreneurship, which has been, goodness me, a wonderful and painful journey. Absolutely. But painful in the sense that I suppose all lessons and all learning has some sense of discomfort associated with it. But it's been an incredible journey. And so what I did is that I took my hobby to make that into a business, and then tried to use my knowledge to create an organization that made sense for me, where I could develop people who work for me, and that's what I've done. And I'm now here, and I'm building things with somebody I know.
That would be me.
That would be you. To try and touch people, further and wider, because why not? Because if it's a possibility, then yay, that's That's what's important for me. So I can't control what it is that's going to happen, but what I can control is the actions I take when those opportunities present themselves. And I think that really has been how my journey's been defined. I mean, to go from counseling to organizational development to restaurateuring to consulting to content, it makes perfect sense when you look at the actions that have necessitated that, but it wouldn't necessarily make sense from somebody or for somebody looking at from the outside.
I asked you the question at the beginning. I want to ask it again, because based on everything you've spoken about with purpose, I'd love to know, what is the legacy that you're leaving, that you want to create? Like, where are you going from here? Where's your purpose taking you? What beauty are you bringing into the world from this place where you are now?
I think that, one could say that one wants, like, I don't know, that you want to be rich and famous and all of these things, but really it's not. For me, it's just about, I think about at my funeral, what will be the eulogy, I suppose. And if it's just that she lived in alignment with what she believed, I think that would be enough for me to know that I'd done what I hoped to.
Yeah. And if someone then said, well, what did she believe? What's the answer to that?
That each of us have a purpose and that we can live in alignment with it.
So listen, Miss Lee, we have a closing tradition on this podcast. Oh. I ask all my guests, what is something the other people value that you don't?
Social media.
Cool. That's actually true.
That would be my answer.
How are you an entrepreneur with no social media presence?
I think it's important for marketing, right? It's not important for me, but I think I want to tell you why. And I had a conversation with one of my barmen the other day, funnily enough, who I said to him, like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to be a barman, or like, what do you want to do? And he said, he wants to make a passive income. And I was like, wow, what is that? Tell me more. And he's like, like these guys on Instagram and the Instagram stars, and and I looked at him and he said, what you see on the outside, what you see is the finished product, might look to you like a passive income, but you can be guaranteed that any person that's ever become famous on Instagram or TikTok or wherever it is has put in a great deal of work to get to that point. And never, ever forget that, is that the finished product always looks pretty and well packaged, but the grit and the hard work and the dirty hands came before it. I know very few people. I know a lot of entrepreneurs, and I don't know one of them who hasn't had a tough time, gotten their hands dirty, knows their business inside and out and back to front. That girl who's sitting there on TikTok and she's famous, she has makeup artists, she has people who dress her, she writes her scripts, she chooses her music. These are things that don't just happen, and it's a truth for the world. And the reason I don't value social media is because I think it perpetuates a lie, which is that it's always pretty and it always looks nice. And honestly, it doesn't. Is that hard work, dedication, getting your hands dirty and jumping into the mud, jumping into the grit is where you will, first of all, find your own self-worth. A lot of the time, you'll see what you're made of. You'll learn to trust yourself. And second of all, it's where success comes from. Is it's never easy. There have always been struggles and there have always been hardships, and that's why I don't value social media.
It actually does not surprise me at all that you said social media, because I well, obviously I know you extremely well, and also from what you've shared on this podcast, authenticity is such a huge value of yours, and social media is not a space that encourages authenticity, that encourages us to really share the messiness that is life. It's all, it's the highlight reel that often people post. So I can understand why you said that. Leeanne Heald, thank you for your time today. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Nex. It's been amazing.
Thank you to the amazing individuals who make great conversations possible. My editor, Stian Moritz, musician Jamie Jenkin, and our incredible guests for their openness. Make sure to check out our website, integrate.net, which has all the resources you need to live a happier, healthier, less stressful life. Sending you so much love. Bye for now.